8-year-old Emma Wilson pressed her small face against the cold hospital window on the 5th floor. The glass felt cool against her warm forehead as she watched people walking on the street below. They all looked so tiny from up here, like little ants moving around with their own important business. Emma had been in this hospital room for 3 weeks now, and she knew every crack in the ceiling and every sound the old building made at night. The chemotherapy treatments had taken away most of her beautiful golden hair that used to bounce when she ran. Now only small patches remained scattered across her pale scalp. Her mother, Sarah, had bought her a collection of colorful scarves and soft hats to keep her head warm, but Emma rarely wore them. She said they made her feel like she was hiding from herself. The doctors told her the hair would grow back, but Emma wondered if it would still be the same sunny color or if it might come back different. Sarah Wilson sat in the uncomfortable blue chair next to Emma's bed, reading stories from a thick book of fairy tales. The book had been Emma's favorite since she was 5 years old. Its pages were worn and some were torn from being read so many times. The cover showed a beautiful castle with tall towers and brave knights on horses. Sarah's voice was gentle and soothing as she read about magical kingdoms and heroic adventures. These stories helped Emma forget about the needles and medicines, and the strange hospital smells that made her feel sick. Emma's absolute favorite stories were always about the Queen's Guard at Buckingham Palace. She loved hearing about those tall soldiers who wore bright red uniforms and enormous black fuzzy hats called bearskin hats. The book described how they stood perfectly still for hours protecting the royal family. Emma would close her eyes and imagine herself standing next to them wearing her own red uniform and tall black hat. She pictured herself being so brave and strong that nothing could make her move or feel afraid. During the long, boring hours in the hospital, Emma would ask her mother the same questions over and over again. "Mommy, do you think the guards ever get tired of standing so still? Do their feet hurt after standing for so long? Do you think they ever smile when no one is looking? What do they think about while they are standing there? Do they ever want to talk to the people who come to see them?" Sarah would answer each question patiently, even though she had answered them many times before. She would stroke Emma's head gently where the soft hair used to be and say, "I am sure they do, sweetheart. I think they smile when no one is watching. And I think they would love to meet a brave little girl like you." The other children in the hospital ward had become Emma's friends over the past few weeks. There was Tommy, who was 7 and had a broken leg from falling off his bike. There was Maria, who was 9 and had to have her appendix removed. There was little Jake, who was only 4 and had pneumonia that made him cough a lot. Emma was the oldest, and she felt responsible for cheering up the younger ones when they felt scared or lonely. She would tell them stories about the royal guards and act out marching like a soldier, which always made them giggle. The nurses at the hospital had grown very fond of Emma. She never complained about the painful treatments or the bad tasting medicine. When new children arrived and felt frightened, Emma would hold their hands and tell them everything would be okay. Nurse Betty, who had worked at the hospital for 20 years, said Emma was the bravest patient she had ever met. The doctors were amazed by Emma's positive attitude despite her serious illness. They said her cheerful spirit was helping her body fight the cancer better than most patients. Every evening when visiting hours were over and the hospital became quiet, Emma would lie in her bed and dream about visiting London. She imagined walking up to the big black gates of Buckingham Palace and seeing the guards standing at attention. In her dreams, she could hear the sound of their heavy boots marching on the stone ground. She pictured their shiny buttons and perfect uniforms and wondered what it would feel like to touch their soft bearskin hats. Sometimes in her dreams, she was healthy and strong again, with her long golden hair flowing in the wind as she walked beside the guards. Sarah watched her daughter with a heavy heart, knowing how much Emma wanted to see the real royal guards. Before Emma got sick, the Wilson family had been saving money for a special trip to London. They had planned to visit all the famous places like Big Ben and the Tower of London, and especially Buckingham Palace, where Emma could see her beloved guards. The family had been putting away a little money each month, and had almost saved enough for the airplane tickets and hotel rooms. But now all that money and much more was being spent on Emma's medical treatments and hospital bills. Mark Wilson, Emma's father, worked at a construction company building houses and offices. He would come to the hospital every evening after work, still wearing his dirty work clothes and steel-toed boots. His hands were rough and calloused from years of hard labor, but they were always gentle when he held Emma's small fingers. Mark would sit on the other side of Emma's bed and listen to Sarah read the fairy tales. Even though he was tired from working all day, he never missed a single evening visit. He would bring Emma's small gifts like a new coloring book or a puzzle. To help pass the long hours, the Wilson family had always been close, but Emma's illness had brought them even closer together. They had learned to treasure every moment they spent together and to find joy in small things like Emma's laughter or a good day, when she felt strong enough to walk around the hospital corridors. Sarah had taken time off from her job as a secretary to stay with Emma during the day. Money was getting tight, but they knew that being together was more important than anything else in the world. Dr. Peterson had delivered the news about Emma's leukemia on a cold Tuesday morning in October. Sarah remembered every detail of that day like it was yesterday. She had taken Emma to the doctor because Emma had been feeling tired and getting bruises that would not go away. Sarah thought it was just because Emma was playing too hard at school. But the blood tests showed something much more serious. The doctor used big medical words that Sarah did not understand at first. He explained that Emma's blood cells were not working properly and that she would need many months of treatment to get better. When Sarah and Mark first heard the word cancer, they felt like their world had fallen apart. They held each other and cried in the hospital parking lot while Emma waited inside with a nurse. They had so many questions and fears running through their minds. Would Emma be okay? How much would the treatment cost? How long would she have to stay in the hospital? Would she be able to go back to school and play with her friends? The doctors tried to be hopeful, but they also wanted the family to understand that it would be a long and difficult journey. The treatment plan was overwhelming for the Wilson family to understand. Emma would need to stay in the hospital for several weeks at a time. She would receive chemotherapy medicine through a small tube that went into her arm. The medicine would make her feel sick and tired and cause her hair to fall out. Between hospital stays, she could go home, but she would need to come back for regular checkups and more treatments. The whole process would take at least 6 months and maybe longer, depending on how well Emma responded to the medicine. Mark had to explain to his boss at the construction company that he might need time off to help with Emma's care. His boss, Mr. Johnson, was understanding and said Mark could take as much time as he needed. But Mark knew that missing work meant less money coming in just when they needed it most. The hospital bills were already starting to pile up on their kitchen table at home. Even with their health insurance, the family would have to pay thousands of dollars for Emma's treatment. Mark started working extra hours and weekends to try to make more money. Sarah's sister Linda lived in another city, but she tried to help as much as she could. She would call every day to check on Emma and ask if the family needed anything. Linda had 2 children of her own, but she offered to drive down and help with cooking and cleaning. She also started a small fundraiser at her workplace to help with Emma's medical expenses. Sarah was grateful for the help, but she felt embarrassed that other people had to know about their money problems. The hardest part for Sarah and Mark was watching Emma deal with all the changes in her life. Emma had been such an active and happy child before getting sick. She loved to run and play soccer with her friends at school. She enjoyed dancing and singing and putting on little shows for her parents. Now she spent most of her time lying in a hospital bed or sitting in chairs getting medicine pumped into her body. The treatments made her feel nauseated and weak. Some days she could barely keep food down, and other days she slept for hours at a time. Mitchell wrote that 3 other guards had requested permission to join him on the visit to Emma. Their names were Corporal David Thompson, Guardsman Michael Roberts, and Guardsman Andrew Clark. All 4 men had been granted special leave and permission to wear their full ceremonial uniforms for the visit. Mitchell explained that this was highly unusual because the guards normally only wore their ceremonial uniforms while on official duty at the palace. But their commanding officers had made an exception for Emma's special circumstances. Guards had spent weeks planning every detail of their visit to make sure it would be perfect for Emma. They had practiced special ceremonies and routines that they could perform in the limited space of a hospital room. Mitchell had researched Emma's medical condition to understand what activities would be safe for her and what might be too tiring. The guards had also been in contact with the hospital staff to coordinate the visit and make sure it would not interfere with Emma's treatment schedule. What made the visit even more special was that the guards had been collecting donations from other members of their regiment to help with Emma's medical expenses. Mitchell explained that when word had spread through the barracks about Emma's story, many guards had contributed money from their own paychecks. They had raised over £2,000, which they wanted to give to Emma's family to help with hospital bills and other expenses. Mitchell said the guards felt honored to be able to help such a brave young girl. The guards had also been in contact with Buckingham Palace officials about Emma's story. Mitchell told Linda that he had received word that members of the royal household had heard about Emma and were interested in her situation. He could not make any promises, but he hinted that there might be additional surprises in store for Emma, beyond just the visit from the guards. He asked Linda to keep this information private because he did not want to raise expectations too high in case the additional plans did not work out. Linda was overwhelmed with joy and gratitude as she read Mitchell's messages. She had never imagined that her simple social media post would lead to such an incredible response. She immediately called Sarah to share the amazing news. Sarah began crying tears of happiness when she heard that 4 real royal guards were planning to visit Emma at the hospital. For the first time since Emma's diagnosis, Sarah felt like something truly wonderful was going to happen for her daughter. Sarah and Mark decided they would tell Emma about the planned visit just one day before it was scheduled to happen. He did not want to tell her too far in advance because Emma might become so excited that she would not be able to sleep or concentrate on her treatments. They also wanted to make sure that nothing would go wrong with the plans at the last minute. Sarah spent days imagining how Emma would react when she learned that her dream was about to come true. The hospital staff was also excited about the upcoming visit from the Royal Guards. Nurse Betty had worked at the Children's Hospital for over 20 years and had never seen anything like this happen before. She helped coordinate with the guards to make sure they would have everything they needed for their visit. The hospital even arranged for a photographer to capture the special. The moment when Emma met the guards for the first time, they wanted to make sure Emma and her family would have photos to remember this incredible day forever. As the day of the visit approached, Emma continued her daily routine without knowing what was about to happen. She was having more good days. Now and her doctors were pleased with her progress. The chemotherapy treatments were working, and Emma was starting to feel stronger. She was even beginning to grow small patches of new hair on her head, which made her very happy. Emma continued to tell stories about the Royal Guards to other children in the hospital and dream about someday visiting London to see them in person. The night before the guards were scheduled to arrive, Sarah could barely contain her excitement. She kept imagining the look on Emma's face when she saw 4 real royal guards walk into her hospital room. Sarah had prepared a special outfit for Emma to wear during the visit. She had bought a new red dress that looked similar to the color of the guards' uniforms and a small Union Jack flag that Emma could wave during the visit. Yes. Sarah had even practiced what she would say to thank the guards for their incredible kindness and generosity. Mark had arranged to take the day off from work so he could be present for Emma's special visit. He had never been good with emotional situations, but he knew this was going to be one of the most important days in his daughter's life. Mark had written a letter to Sergeant Mitchell and the other guards, thanking them for their service to their country and for their kindness to Emma. He planned to give them the letter during their visit, along with a small gift that Emma had made for them during her art therapy sessions at the hospital. Tuesday morning arrived with bright sunshine streaming through the hospital windows. Sarah woke up early, feeling nervous and excited at the same time. She had barely slept the night before, thinking about all the wonderful things that were going to happen for Emma today. Sarah got dressed in her nicest outfit because she wanted to look presentable when she met the Royal Guards. She'd even gotten her hair done at the salon the day before because she knew there would be photographs taken during the visit. Emma woke up in her usual cheerful mood, not knowing that this day would be different from any other day in the hospital. Sarah helped Emma get dressed in the special red dress and brushed the small patches of new hair that were starting to grow back. Emma loved the new dress and twirled around her hospital room to make it spin out like a princess gown. Sarah's hands were shaking with excitement as she helped Emma get ready, but she tried to act normal so Emma would not suspect anything unusual was about to happen. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Sarah took Emma's hand and told her they were going to have some very special visitors today. Emma's eyes grew wide with curiosity as Sarah explained that some soldiers were coming to meet her, because they had heard she was interested in learning about military service. Emma was excited to meet real soldiers, but she had no idea that these were not just any soldiers but actual royal guards from Buckingham Palace, who had traveled hundreds of miles just to see her. Down in the hospital parking lot, a small crowd was beginning to gather as word spread that something special was happening. Sergeant Mitchell and the 3 other guards had arrived in a rented van with all their ceremonial equipment carefully packed in special cases. The guards spent 30 minutes in the parking lot getting dressed in their full ceremonial uniforms. They helped each other with the intricate details of their uniforms, making sure every button was polished and every piece of equipment was perfectly positioned. The sight of 4 royal guards in full ceremonial dress walking through the hospital corridors was something that no one who witnessed it would ever forget. Their heavy black boots made a distinctive sound as they marched in perfect formation down the hallway. Their bright red tunics with gold braiding gleamed under the fluorescent hospital lights. Their enormous black bearskin hats made them look even taller and more imposing than they already were. Nurses and doctors stopped their work to stare in amazement as the guards passed by their stations. Other patients and families in the hospital came out of their rooms to see what was happening. Children pressed their faces against doorways to get a glimpse of the magnificent uniforms and tall, fuzzy hats. Some people started taking pictures with their phones, while others just stood in silent awe. The guards maintained their serious military bearing as they walked, but inside they were all feeling excited and nervous about meeting Emma. They had practiced for this moment. But none of them had ever done anything quite like this before. Sergeant Mitchell led the formation as they approached Emma's room on the 5th floor. He carried a leather briefcase containing special documents and gifts that they had prepared for Emma. Corporal Thompson carried a ceremonial sword that gleamed in its polished scabbard. Guardsman Roberts and Guardsman Clark each carried parts of their ceremonial equipment that they planned to show Emma during their visit. All 4 men had spent hours polishing and preparing their uniforms and equipment to make sure everything looked perfect for this special occasion. As they reached Emma's room, the guards stopped and formed a line in the hallway. Mitchell stepped forward and knocked gently on the doorframe. His heart was beating fast as he asked permission to enter the room. Inside, Emma was sitting on her bed with her parents, not knowing what was about to happen. Sarah squeezed Emma's hand and said, "Emma, I want you to meet some very special people who have come a long way to see you." The door opened, and Sergeant Mitchell stepped into the room, followed by the 3 other guards in their magnificent uniforms. Emma's school friends tried to stay in touch by sending her cards and pictures they had drawn. Her teacher, Mrs. Robinson, organized the class to make a big Get Well poster with messages from all the students. Emma loved getting these surprises and would ask her mother to read every single message out loud. Her best friend Jessica came to visit once, but seeing Emma without her beautiful hair and looking so thin made Jessica cry. After that visit, Emma asked her parents not to let her school friends come anymore because she did not want them to feel sad. The other families in the children's cancer ward became like a second family to the Wilsons. There was the Martinez family whose son Carlos was 12 and had brain cancer. There was Mrs. Chen, whose daughter Amy was 6 and had the same type of leukemia as Emma. These families understood what each other was going through in ways that other people could not. They would share meals in the hospital cafeteria and take turns watching each other's children. When one parent needed to go home or run errands, during the long days and nights at the hospital, Emma continued to dream about her trip to London. She would ask her parents to show her pictures on the internet of Buckingham Palace and the changing of the guard ceremony. She memorized facts about the royal guards and could tell anyone who would listen about their history and traditions. Emma learned that the guards were called the Queen's Guard and that they protected the royal family. She found out that their tall black hats were made from real bear fur and weighed over 1 pound each. She discovered that the guards had to stand perfectly still for 2 hours at a time and could not talk or smile while on duty. Sarah and Mark had quietly put away their London travel plans when Emma got sick. They could not afford to take a vacation when they were struggling to pay medical bills, but they did not want to tell Emma that the trip was impossible because they knew how much it meant to her. Instead, they would say things like, "When you get better, we will definitely go to London, or the guards will be waiting for you when you are feeling strong again." They hoped that having something to look forward to would help Emma stay positive during her treatment. As the weeks passed, Emma's condition slowly started to improve. The doctor said the chemotherapy was working and that her blood tests were showing good results. Emma still felt tired and sick most of the time, but she was having more good days mixed in with the bad ones. On her good days, she would walk around the hospital floor and visit with other children who were patients. She would tell them stories about the Royal Guards and act out marching like a soldier. Her positive attitude and cheerful personality made her popular with all the hospital staff and other families in the ward. It was during one of these good days that something unexpected happened that would change everything for Emma and her family. Sarah's sister Linda had been trying to think of ways to help Emma feel better and bring some joy into her difficult situation. Linda was not very good with computers, but her teenage daughter helped her create a social media account.
All together.
They wrote a simple post about Emma's battle with cancer and her dream to meet a real royal guard from Buckingham Palace. They included a photo of Emma wearing one of her colorful scarves and holding her favorite book about the Queen's Guard. The post that Linda shared was not fancy or professional looking. It simply said, "My 8-year-old niece Emma is fighting leukemia, and her biggest dream is to meet one of the Queen's Guards from Buckingham Palace. She talks about them every day and knows everything about their history and traditions. If anyone knows how we could make this happen, it would mean the world to her and our family. Please share this if you can." Linda did not expect much to happen from the post. She only had about 50 friends on her social media account, and most of them lived in their small town. But something magical started to happen within just a few hours of Linda posting Emma's story. Her friends began sharing the post with their friends. People who had never heard of Emma Wilson before were reading her story and feeling moved by her courage and her simple wish. The post began spreading across the internet like wildfire. Then one day it had been shared hundreds of times. Within 3 days it had been shared thousands of times. People from different countries were reading about Emma and leaving comments of support and encouragement. The comments on the post were overwhelming for Linda and Sarah to read. Strangers from around the world were writing messages like praying, "For sweet Emma, and what a brave little fighter, and I hope her dream comes true." Some people shared their own stories about family members who had battled cancer. Others offered to help in any way they could. A few people even said they had connections in London and would try to reach out to people who might be able to help arrange something special for Emma. Among all the hundreds of comments and messages, there was one that stood out from all the rest. It came from someone with the username Guard Sergeant JM, and it simply said, "I am currently stationed at Buckingham Palace with the Queen's Guard. I have seen Emma's story, and I would like to help make her dream come true. Please send me a private message so we can discuss this further." Sarah could not believe what she was reading when Linda called to tell her about the message. Could this really be from an actual royal guard, or was it someone playing a cruel joke? Linda was suspicious at first and did not want to get Emma's hopes up if this person was not real. She decided to ask the person to prove he was really a royal guard before she would tell Sarah and Emma about the message. The man who said he was Sergeant James Mitchell sent several photos of himself in his full ceremonial uniform standing at Buckingham Palace. He also provided his official military email address and phone number.
Oh.
Linda did some research online and found that James Mitchell was indeed listed as a serving member of the Queen's Guard Regiment. Sergeant Mitchell explained in his messages that he was 34 years old and had been serving with the Queen's Guard for 8 years. Before that, he had served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan with the British Army. He was married and had a 6-year-old daughter named Sophie, who was about the same age as Emma. When he saw Emma's story during his break time at the palace, he felt a strong connection to her situation. As a father himself, he could imagine how worried and scared Emma's parents must be feeling every day. What impressed Linda the most about Sergeant Mitchell was how genuine and caring he seemed in his messages. He asked detailed questions about Emma's condition and treatment. He wanted to know what her favorite things were, besides the Royal Guards, and what kind of activities she enjoyed. He asked if there were any restrictions on visitors due to her medical condition. Mitchell explained that he had never done anything like this before, but he felt strongly that he wanted to help Emma in some way. Mitchell told Linda that he had already spoken to his commanding officer about Emma's situation. The commanding officer was sympathetic, but explained that there were strict rules about royal guards leaving their posts and making unofficial visits. However, Mitchell was determined to find a way to make something happen for Emma. He said he was willing to use his own vacation time and pay his own expenses to travel to meet Emma if his superiors would give him permission. He promised to keep working on getting approval from his commanders, while Mitchell was working on getting permission from his military superiors. Emma's story continued to spread across the internet. News websites and blogs began picking up the story and writing articles about the brave little girl who dreamed of meeting a royal guard. Local television stations in Emma's hometown started calling the hospital asking for interviews. The attention was overwhelming for the Wilson family, who had always lived a quiet, private life. Sarah was not sure if all this publicity was a good thing or if it might somehow hurt Emma. Emma herself was not aware of all the attention her story was getting online. Her parents decided not to tell her about the social media post or the thousands of people who were reading about her situation. They did not want to disappoint her if nothing came of it. Instead, they continued with their daily routine of hospital visits and treatments, while secretly hoping that somehow Sergeant Mitchell would be able to keep his promise to help make Emma's dream come true. 3 weeks after the first message from Sergeant Mitchell, Linda received another message that made her heart race with excitement.
Oh.
Mitchell wrote that he had received approval from his commanding officers to take a special leave of absence to visit Emma, but what he told her next was even more incredible than she had dared to hope for. Mitchell explained that when he had shared Emma's story with his fellow guards at Buckingham Palace, they had all been deeply moved by her courage and determination. The other guards had volunteered to help make Emma's visit extra special. On a sunny Tuesday morning, something magical happened at the Children's Hospital that left staff and patients speechless. Sergeant Mitchell arrived in full ceremonial dress uniform, complete with his towering bearskin hat and gleaming sword. But he wasn't alone. 3 other guards had joined him, creating a proper honor guard formation right in the hospital corridor. The sound of their synchronized footsteps echoed through the halls as they marched toward Emma's room. Nurses and doctors stopped their work to watch in amazement, while other young patients peeked out of their rooms with wide eyes. When they reached Emma's door, Mitchell knocked gently and asked permission to enter. Emma's face lit up with pure joy when she saw the 4 imposing figures standing at attention in her doorway. The guards spent the entire day with Emma, far exceeding anyone's expectations of what this visit would entail. They taught her the proper way to salute, showed her how to march in formation, and even let her wear Mitchell's bearskin hat, which was almost as tall as she was. Mitchell broke protocol completely by sitting on Emma's bed and sharing stories about his duties at the palace. Describing the Queen's daily routine and the changing of the guard ceremony in vivid detail, the other guards entertained Emma with tales of funny incidents that had happened during their service, making her laugh until her cheeks hurt. They presented her with an official certificate, making her an honorary royal guard, and a miniature uniform that fit her perfectly. But the biggest surprise came when Mitchell announced that the Queen herself had heard about Emma's story and had sent a personal letter, along with an invitation to visit Buckingham Palace once she recovered. Emma's tears of joy moved everyone in the room, and even the stern-faced guards found themselves wiping their eyes. The day that was supposed to be a simple visit had become a life-changing experience that gave Emma the strength and hope she needed to continue fighting her illness. Emma's reaction was everything that Sarah and Mark had hoped for and more. Her mouth dropped open in complete shock and amazement as she saw the 4 royal guards standing in her hospital room. For a moment, she could not speak or move as her brain tried to process what she was seeing. These were not just any soldiers, but real royal guards wearing the exact same uniforms she had been dreaming about for months. Their red tunics were even brighter than she had imagined, and their bearskin hats were taller and more impressive than any picture she had ever seen. Tears began streaming down Emma's face as the reality of the situation sank in. These were actual guards from Buckingham Palace standing in her very own hospital room. Sarah and Mark were also crying as they watched their daughter's dream come true before their eyes. The guards maintained their military composure, but their eyes showed the emotion they were feeling as they witnessed Emma's pure joy and amazement. This was why they had traveled so far and worked so hard to make this visit happen. Sergeant Mitchell stepped forward and introduced himself, and the other guards to Emma. He explained that they had heard about her interest in the Queen's Guard and had come to meet her and share some stories about their service at Buckingham Palace. Emma could barely find her voice to respond, but she managed to whisper, "Are you really real royal guards from the palace?" Mitchell smiled and assured her that they were indeed the real thing and that they were honored to meet such a brave and special young lady. What happened next exceeded every expectation that Emma and her family had ever dared to have. The guards did not just make a quick visit and leave as everyone had expected. Instead, they spent the entire day with Emma, transforming her hospital room into a magical place filled with wonder and joy. Sergeant Mitchell began by teaching Emma the proper way to salute like a real soldier.
Ow!
He showed her how to stand at attention with her shoulders back and her chin up. Emma practiced the movements over and over again until she could perform a perfect military salute. Corporal Thompson brought out his ceremonial sword and carefully showed Emma how it was made and what it was used for during official ceremonies. The sword had intricate engravings and a polished blade that reflected the light beautifully.
Emma
was amazed by the weight of the sword and the skill required to carry it during long ceremonies. Thompson explained that the guards carried these swords during important state occasions when they escorted members of the royal family. The guards had brought with them a spare bearskin hat that was smaller than their regulation size. Placed it on Emma's head, and she laughed with delight as the hat came down almost to her nose. The hat was much heavier than Emma had expected, and she gained a new appreciation for how strong the guards had to be to wear these hats for hours. During their duties, Sergeant Mitchell explained that each hat was made from the fur of a Canadian black bear and took skilled craftsmen many hours to create. But the biggest surprise came when the guards presented Emma with a complete miniature uniform that had been specially made for her. The uniform included a tiny red tunic with gold braiding, a small black hat, and even miniature medals and insignia. Emma could not believe that this beautiful uniform was really for her to keep. Sarah helped Emma put on the uniform over her red dress, and she looked like a perfect miniature royal guard. The guards saluted Emma in her new uniform and declared her an honorary member of the Queen's Guard. Guardsman Roberts had brought a large folder filled with photographs from Buckingham Palace showing the guards during various ceremonies and duties. He spent time explaining each photograph to Emma and telling her stories about life at the palace. Emma learned about the daily routine of the guards and how they prepared for important events. She saw pictures of the guards marching in formation during the changing of the guard ceremony and standing at attention during state visits from foreign dignitaries. The guards taught Emma how to march in formation just like they did at the palace. Even though the hospital room was small, they managed to demonstrate the precise steps and timing required for military marching. Emma practiced walking in step with the guards and tried to copy their serious expressions and perfect posture. The other children in the hospital ward could hear Emma's laughter echoing down the hallway as she enjoyed this incredible experience. Sergeant Mitchell then shared stories about his time serving in Afghanistan, and how he had joined the Queen's Guard after his military service overseas. He told Emma about the pride he felt in serving his country and protecting the royal family. He explained that being a royal guard required not just physical strength but also mental discipline and dedication. Emma listened to every word with complete fascination, asking thoughtful questions about military life and service. The guards had also prepared a special certificate declaring Emma an honorary royal guard of Buckingham Palace. The certificate was printed on official-looking paper with elegant lettering and an official seal. It stated that Emma Wilson was hereby recognized for her courage, bravery, and dedication in the face of adversity. The certificate was signed by all 4 guards and dated with the day of their visit. Emma held the certificate carefully, as if it was made of precious gold. As the afternoon continued, the guards shared more personal stories about their families and their reasons for wanting to meet Emma. Sergeant Mitchell talked about his own daughter, Sophie, and how Emma's courage had inspired him to be a better father. Corporal Thompson explained that he had lost his own mother to cancer when he was young, and he understood some of what Emma was going through. The guards had moved beyond their formal military roles and had become genuine friends with Emma and her family. The hospital staff was amazed by the transformation they witnessed in Emma during the guards' visit. Nurse Betty said she had never seen Emma so animated and full of energy. Even Dr. Peterson stopped by to meet the guards and was impressed by the positive effect they were having on Emma's spirits. The doctor explained to the guards how important emotional support was for children fighting serious illnesses, and thanked them for providing Emma with such a wonderful experience. The guards had saved their biggest surprise for last. The day was drawing to a close. Sergeant Mitchell opened his leather briefcase and pulled out an elegant envelope with official royal seals. He explained to Emma that her story had reached very important people at Buckingham Palace, including members of the royal household. The envelope contained a personal letter from representatives of the royal family expressing their admiration for Emma's courage and their best wishes for her recovery. The Wilson family had planned a dream trip to London before Emma's diagnosis. They had saved 4 months to visit all the famous landmarks, especially Buckingham Palace, where Emma hoped to see the famous guards. When the doctors delivered the devastating news about Emma's leukemia, those travel plans seemed impossible. The little girl's condition required constant medical attention, and the expensive treatments had drained the family's savings completely. Sarah worked double shifts as a nurse while her husband Mark took care of Emma, but the medical bills kept piling up. Despite everything, Emma never stopped talking about her dream to meet a real royal guard. She would draw pictures of them with her crayons, creating colorful scenes of guards marching and standing at attention. News of Emma's story reached the local community through a social media post that Sarah's sister had shared. The post described Emma's battle with cancer and her simple wish to meet a royal guard. Within days, the story had spread across the internet, touching hearts around the world. Messages of support poured in from strangers, but one message stood out from the rest. Guard Sergeant James Mitchell, currently stationed at Buckingham Palace, had seen Emma's story during his break. The 34-year-old soldier, who had served in Afghanistan and had a young daughter of his own, felt a deep connection to Emma's situation. Without hesitation, he contacted his commanding officers about a very unusual request that had never been made before in the regiment's long history. What happened next surprised everyone, including Sergeant Mitchell's fellow guards. The commanding officers not only approved his request but decided to support it fully. They arranged for Mitchell to take special leave and travel to Emma's hometown, but this was just the beginning of their incredible plan. The entire regiment contributed money from their own pockets to cover Mitchell's travel expenses and accommodation. They also prepared something extraordinary that would make Emma's dream come true in ways she never imagined. Mitchell spent hours polishing his ceremonial uniform, ensuring every button gleamed and every detail was perfect. He wanted to give Emma the full royal experience that she had dreamed about for so long.